The day the aliens came was sunny and warm. Most people in Washington, D.C. were going about their day as usual when the sky darkened with a massive ship. It was smooth and silver, like a giant teardrop hanging in the air. Lieutenant John Mason stood at attention near the landing site. His dark uniform was perfectly pressed, and sweat formed on his brow under the summer sun. As part of the military liaison team, it was his job to meet these visitors from another world. Remember, Lieutenant, these are the first aliens we've ever met. Don't do anything stupid, General Harris whispered beside him. Yes, sir, Mason replied, keeping his eyes on the ship. A door opened in the side of the ship. A ramp extended down to touch the grass of the National Mall. Everyone held their breath. The aliens that walked down were not what Mason expected. They wore bulky suits that covered their entire bodies. The suits had blinking lights and clear helmets that showed faces with large eyes and skin in shades of blue and green. They moved slowly, as if every step was difficult. They looked scared, Mason whispered to Dr. Susan Bell, the scientist standing next to him. Or careful, she replied, watching them closely through her glasses. Her blonde hair was pulled back, in a tight bun, and her eyes narrowed as she studied the visitors. The lead alien approached. Its suit made soft whirring sounds with each step. I am Ambassador Vexilor of the Zarkath Confederation, the alien said through a speaker on its suit. Its voice sounded metallic and flat. We come in peace, and wish to establish relations with your world. The president stepped forward and welcomed them. Mason watched as the aliens flinched when a bird flew overhead. They seemed jumpy and nervous. Later that evening, at a special dinner held for the aliens, Mason noticed more strange behavior. The aliens had removed their suits after testing showed they could breathe Earth's air, but they still acted oddly. Why? Do you not have protective barriers? Ambassador Vexilor asked Mason, pointing at the open windows where a light breeze came in. It's a nice night. We like fresh air, Mason explained. The alien made a chirping sound that might have been alarm. Fresh air contains particulates, spores, and microbes. It is dangerous, Mason laughed. I guess we're used to it. When the food arrived, things got even stranger. The aliens watched in horror as humans ate salad. You consume raw plant matter? One alien named Zixtal asked, his 4 eyes widening. It's just lettuce and tomatoes, Dr. Bell said with a smile. Unprocessed biological material could contain toxins, the alien explained, backing away from the table slightly. Ambassador Vexilor leaned toward the alien dining official and spoke in their clicking language. Mason couldn't understand the words, but he caught one phrase repeated several times. Class 5 Deathworld. Later, when most guests were mingling, Mason approached Dr. Bell. Did you hear what they kept saying? Something about a Deathworld? Dr. Bell nodded. I asked Ambassador Vexilor about it. He seemed embarrassed but explained that in their galactic classification system, Earth is categorized as a Class 5 Deathworld, one of the most dangerous planets known. Dangerous? Earth? Mason looked around at the peaceful garden where the reception was being held. That's ridiculous. Not to them, Dr. Bell said. Apparently, our gravity is crushing, our temperature variations extreme, our atmosphere corrosive, and our biodiversity terrifying. Most planets with intelligent life are much more stable and gentle than Earth. Mason watched as an alien jumped when a moth flew near its face. They evolved in safer conditions than we did. Exactly, Dr. Bell said, excitement in her voice. Think about it. We live on a world so harsh that these advanced aliens are afraid of our salads and our air. The next morning, Mason received new orders. He was to work with Dr. Bell to learn more about this Deathworld classification. As he walked to her laboratory, he looked at his world with new eyes. The rain starting to fall, the breeze on his skin, the birds and insects around him. All normal to him but terrifying to beings from gentler worlds. Earth wasn't just home. It was a planet that had forged humanity through fire and challenge. And the aliens were about to learn what that meant. The Zarkath embassy was set up in a large building near the White House. The aliens had changed almost everything inside. Special filters cleaned the air. The temperature stayed exactly the same all day and night. The lights were dimmer than humans preferred. John Mason walked through a scanner that sprayed him with something that smelled like lemons before he could enter. "What was that?" he asked the alien guard. "Decontaminant. Your world has many microbes," the guard replied, not looking at Mason directly. Dr. Bell was already inside, talking with a Zarkath scientist named Krell-Tax. The alien was taller than the others, with skin that was more green than blue. Instead of 4 eyes like most of the others, Krell-Tax had 6, all blinking at different times. "Lieutenant Mason, we were just discussing the planetary classification system," Dr. Bell said with excitement in her voice. Krell-Tax led them to a room with a large screen on the wall. "With permission from Ambassador Vexilor, I can show you our database." The screen lit up with strange symbols that changed into English words. A chart appeared showing planets sorted by different colors. "The Zarkath Confederation has discovered over 3,000 planets with life," Krell-Tax explained. "We group them from Class 1, the most gentle, to Class 5, the most dangerous." "And Earth is Class 5? Mason asked. "Yes. One of only 3 known Class 5 worlds in our charted galaxy." Krell-Tax touched the screen and Earth appeared, surrounded by red warning symbols. Dr. Bell adjusted her glasses. "What makes a planet Class 5? Krell-Tax touched the screen again. 6 categories appeared. First is gravity. Your world pulls at 9.8 meters per second squared. Most life-bearing worlds we know have less than half that. Second is temperature variation. Your world ranges from -50 to +50 degrees Celsius. Most worlds vary by no more than 10 degrees. Third is atmospheric composition. Your oxygen level is very high, causing rapid oxidation of materials. Fourth is biodiversity of toxic life forms. Earth has over 700 venomous animal species and thousands of poisonous plants. Fifth is microbial threats. Your world has millions of bacteria and viruses. Sixth is geological instability. You have active volcanoes, earthquakes, and extreme weather. Mason and Dr. Bell looked at each other. "But this is normal for us," Mason said. Krell-Tax made a chirping sound. "That is what makes humans so interesting. You evolved on a world that would kill most species." "Where is your homeworld on this chart?" Dr. Bell asked. Krell-Tax showed them a blue planet. "Zarka Prime, Class 1, stable temperature year-round. Low gravity, few predators, no active volcanoes, safe." "Sounds boring," Mason said with a small smile. Krell-Tax tilted his head. "Boring? He means it sounds very peaceful," Dr. Bell explained. Quickly. As they continued looking through the database, more Zarkath scientists entered the room. They spoke in their clicking language and kept looking at the humans. "What are they saying?" Mason asked. Krell-Tax hesitated. "They are discussing the meal they observed last night. They cannot believe humans eat plants containing capsaicin." "Capsaicin? You mean spicy food?" Dr. Bell asked. "Yes, what you call hot sauce contains a neurotoxin that causes pain signals, yet humans consume it for pleasure. It is very confusing." Mason laughed. "Wait until they hear about coffee and alcohol." Dr. Bell pulled up more information on the screen about Earth. According to this, most species visiting Earth would need protective suits just to walk outside. "Yes," Krell-Tax agreed. "Your ultraviolet radiation levels alone are dangerous to many species." As they were talking, an alert sounded. Krell-Tax checked a small device on his wrist. "What's happening?" Mason asked. "A new ship has entered your solar system. It is a Reknar vessel." "Reknar?" Dr. Bell asked. "They are a predator species that serves the Confederation as warriors and hunters. They are considered elite fighters." Krell-Tax looked worried. "But I do not understand why they would come to a Class 5 world. Even Reknar usually avoid such dangerous planets." Mason noticed all the aliens in the room had gone very quiet, looking at screens and talking in hushed tones. "Is this bad?" he asked. "I do not know," Krell-Tax said. "But Reknar only travel for one purpose, to hunt. And they have come to your Deathworld." The Reknar ship landed 3 days later. It was not smooth and silver like the Zarkath vessels. Instead, it was dark red with sharp edges that made it look like a weapon itself. It came down in a field outside of town, sending dust and small rocks flying in all directions. Mason watched from a safe distance with General Harris and a team of soldiers. The Zarkath had warned them that the Reknar were dangerous. "Remember, Lieutenant, these are not scientists or diplomats," General Harris said. "According to the Zarkath, these are hunters." "Yes, sir," Mason replied, watching as the ship's dock opened. The Reknar were nothing like the Zarkath. They were tall and muscular with thick leathery skin in shades of orange and red. They had no hair, but rows of small spikes ran along their heads and down their backs. Most shocking were their teeth. Each Reknar had 2 rows of sharp fangs that showed when they spoke. Unlike the Zarkath, they wore very little protection. Their clothing looked like armor made of some kind of metal and leather. They carried weapons that hung from belts and straps. The leader stepped forward. He was the biggest of them all, standing nearly 7 feet tall. A long scar ran from his left eye down to his jaw. "I am Huntmaster Dragok of the Reknar Hunter Guild," he announced in a deep, growling voice. "We have come to test our skills on this world." General Harris stepped forward. "I'm General Harris of the United States Army. We welcome you to Earth, but we need to understand your intentions." Dragok laughed, showing all his teeth. "Our intentions are simple. We hunt. We are the greatest predators in the galaxy, and we have heard much about this Deathworld of yours." "You want to hunt our animals?" Mason asked. Dragok's yellow eyes fixed on Mason. "Animals, yes, and perhaps test ourselves against your warriors. We hear humans are surprisingly tough for soft creatures." The meeting was tense, but eventually an agreement was reached. The Reknar would be allowed to hunt in a remote area of the Rocky Mountains, but only certain animals and with human guides. Mason was assigned to lead the hunting party. The next day, Mason met the Reknar at their ship. There were 5 of them, including Huntmaster Dragok. They were loading equipment and checking weapons. "These are pathetic," Dragok said, looking at the supplies the humans had brought. "Water purifiers, food rations, medical kits. True hunters need only their skills and weapons." "On Earth, it's better to be prepared," Mason said. Dragok made a dismissive sound. "Your world may be classified as dangerous, but we have hunted on 100 planets. We will show you how real predators survive." The trip to the mountains took several hours by helicopter. The Reknar seemed uncomfortable with the flight, gripping their seats tightly. Mason noticed they breathed harder than normal in the thin mountain air. When they landed and stepped out, Dragok looked around at the forests and mountains. "This is the deadly environment we've heard so much about. It seems peaceful." As if to answer him, a mosquito landed on his arm. He slapped at it and looked surprised at the small spot of blood. "What was that creature?" he demanded. "Just a mosquito," Mason said. "A small insect that drinks blood. They're harmless." "It penetrated my skin without difficulty," Dragok said, sounding concerned. As they hiked deeper into the forest, Mason noticed the Reknar were already struggling. The gravity seemed to tire them quickly. The changing temperature as clouds passed overhead made them uncomfortable. When they stopped near a stream for a break, Mason dipped his hand in and drank some water. The Reknar stared at him in shock. "You drink unprocessed water directly from the environment?" one of them asked. Mason shrugged. "Mountain streams are usually safe enough." Later, Mason casually brushed away a spider crawling on his pack. Dragok stepped back quickly. "What is that creature?" "Just a spider. This kind isn't dangerous." "This kind?" Dragok repeated. "There are dangerous kinds?" "Oh, sure," Mason said. "Black widows, brown recluses, hobo spiders. Their venom can make you pretty sick." He said this casually, not thinking much of it. The Reknar hunters looked at each other. For the first time, Mason saw something in their eyes that looked like worry. That night, as they set up camp, Dragok approached Mason. "This world," he said quietly. "It is truly a Class 5, isn't it?" "That's what the Zarkath say," Mason replied. "And you humans, you live here. You drink its water. You touch its creatures. You breathe its air." Dragok stared at him with new interest. "Perhaps you are not as soft as you appear." The morning brought dark clouds and a chill wind. Mason zipped up his jacket as he stepped out of his tent. The Vreknar were already up, standing in a circle and talking in low voices. "Storm's coming," Mason said to Dragok. "We should find shelter soon." Dragok looked at the sky. "A simple weather change. We will continue our hunt." "Mountain storms can be dangerous," Mason warned. "The temperature can drop fast. Lightning, flash floods. We are not afraid of water and light, human," Dragok interrupted. "Today we track the large predator you call a mountain lion." Mason knew it was a bad idea, but the Vreknar wouldn't listen. They started up a steep trail that led higher into the mountains. The first drops of rain began to fall. By midday, the storm had grown worse. Rain fell in sheets. Thunder boomed overhead. The trail turned muddy and slippery. "We should turn back," Mason shouted over the wind. "No," Dragok shouted back. "We are close. Our sensors detect a large animal ahead." They pushed on, climbing higher. The rain turned to sleet, then to snow as they gained elevation. The Vreknar moved more slowly now, their bodies not built for the cold and thin air. Mason was checking his map when he heard a rumble. He looked up to see rocks and mud sliding down the mountain toward them. "Landslide," he yelled. "Move!" The group scattered. Mason ran to the side, diving behind a large boulder. When the slide stopped, he looked around. The trail was gone. Dragok and the other Vreknar were nowhere to be seen. "Dragok," Mason called. "Can anyone hear me?" No answer came. The storm muffled all sounds. His radio was damaged in his fall. He was alone. Mason didn't panic. He checked his supplies and looked at his map. He needed to find shelter first, then look for the aliens. He knew these mountains well enough to survive. He found a small cave as the storm grew worse. After making sure no animals were inside, he set up a small fire near the entrance. He would wait out the worst of the storm, then search for the Vreknar. Morning came with clear skies but cold air. Mason packed his gear and began tracking the aliens. He found signs of them, strange footprints, broken branches, a piece of their equipment. Near a cliff edge, he found the first Vreknar. The alien was sitting against a tree, shivering badly. His orange skin had turned a pale yellow. "What happened to you?" Mason asked, kneeling beside him. "Cold. Too cold," the Vreknar said through chattering teeth. "Body shutting down." Mason pulled out an emergency blanket and wrapped it around the alien. He gave him water and an energy bar. "Your species doesn't handle cold well?" The Vreknar shook his head. "Our homeworld, always warm, never below 20 of your degrees." Mason helped the alien to his feet. "Let's find the others." They found another Vreknar an hour later, suffering from altitude sickness. His breathing was rapid and shallow. "The air here," he gasped. "Too thin, not enough oxygen." Mason shared his oxygen kit with the alien. "Your homeworld has more oxygen than Earth?" "Yes," the Vreknar said. "And lower gravity." By afternoon they had found 2 more Vreknar. One had broken his leg in the landslide. Another was sick from drinking unfiltered water from a stream. None of them looked like the fierce hunters they had been 2 days ago. Only Dragok was still missing. Mason tracked him to a small valley. He found the huntmaster backed against a rock wall facing a mountain lion. The big cat was crouched low, ready to pounce. Dragok held his weapon, but his hand was shaking from cold and exhaustion. Without thinking, Mason grabbed a stick and ran forward, yelling and waving his arms. The mountain lion looked at him, then backed away slowly before turning and running into the trees. Dragok slid down the rock to sit on the ground. His breathing was heavy. "You saved me," he said. "Why?" Mason offered him water. "That's what we do on a death world. We look out for each other." Dragok stared at him. "Your world, it tried to kill us in ways we never expected. Not with large predators or poison, but with its very nature. Its weather, its air, its water." Mason nodded. "Earth is tough. It made us tough too." "The Zarkath were right," Dragok said quietly. "This is truly a Class 5 death world. And you humans, You are more impressive than we thought. It took 2 days to get all the Reknar back to their ship. Mason called for help and helicopters came to pick them up from the mountain. The alien hunters were quiet during the flight back, their pride damaged more than their bodies. At the Y Zarkath embassy, Dr. Bell was waiting with Kreltax. The scientist's 6 eyes widened when he saw the condition of the Vreknar. What happened to them? He asked Mason. Earth happened, Mason replied. The Reknar were taken to a medical area. Mason and Dr. Bell sat with Kreltax in a meeting room, explaining what had occurred in the mountains. A simple storm and some cold weather did this to the mighty Reknar. Kreltax sounded amazed. Their bodies aren't made for our environment, Dr. Bell explained. Just like yours aren't. Ambassador Vexeler entered the room, looking worried. This incident could cause problems. The Vreknar are proud warriors. Being defeated by a planet's environment rather than in battle is shameful for them. They weren't defeated, Mason said. They just learned that Earth is as dangerous as your classification says it is. Later that evening, Mason was surprised when Huntmaster Dragok asked to speak with him. The Reknar looked better after treatment, his orange skin back to its normal color. Lieutenant Mason, Dragok said, I have been thinking about our experience in your mountains. It was a tough situation, Mason said. Yes, but not for you. Dragok's yellow eyes studied Mason closely. You were comfortable in conditions that nearly killed my hunters. You drank the water, breathed the thin air, and moved easily in the cold and high gravity. I grew up here, Mason said simply. That is what fascinates me, Dragok said. Your species evolved on this death world. It shaped you, made you adaptable, and resilient in ways we are not. He paused. I wish to see how this adaptability translates to other situations. What do you mean? A challenge. A contest between you and me, on neutral ground, not on your world, which favors you, nor on mine, which would favor me. Mason was surprised. What kind of contest? The Zarkath have agreed to host it on their diplomatic vessel in orbit. Various tests of strength, endurance, problem-solving, and combat skills. Combat? Mason frowned. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Not to the death, Dragok clarified quickly. A test of skills only. Mason thought about it. General Harris would need to approve, of course. But it might be a good way to learn more about these aliens and their capabilities. I'll need to discuss it with my superiors, he said. Dragok nodded. Of course. Word of the challenge spread quickly. By the next morning, when Mason met with General Harris and Dr. Bell, it was all anyone was talking about. The Zarkath think, this is a good idea, Dr. Bell told them. They're fascinated by how humans might compare to Vreknar in controlled conditions. Other alien species are requesting to observe, General Harris added. This could be a valuable diplomatic opportunity. Show them what humans are capable of. 2 days later, Mason found himself on a shuttle heading to the Zarkath vessel in orbit. Dr. Bell sat next to him reviewing data on a tablet. The Zarkath have set up what they call a neutral environment for the contest, she explained. Temperature, gravity, and atmosphere that should not favor either species. How many different aliens will be watching? Mason asked, feeling nervous. Representatives from at least 6 species. They're all curious about humans now. Some are even placing bets on the outcome. Great, Mason muttered. No pressure. The Zarkath ship was enormous, much bigger than it had looked from the ground. Inside corridors stretched in all directions. Aliens of different shapes and colors moved about, many stopping to stare at Mason as he passed. They were led to a large chamber that had been converted into an arena of sorts. Dragok was already there, wearing minimal armor and stretching his muscular limbs. He looked much more imposing here than he had shivering in the mountains. Lieutenant Mason, he said with a toothy smile, I am glad you accepted my challenge. Wouldn't miss it, Mason replied, trying to sound confident. Around the arena, seats were filled with aliens of various species. Some looked like the Zarkath. Others were completely different. Some with multiple limbs, others with no visible eyes. Some floating rather than sitting. Kreltax approached Mason. The first test will begin soon. Are you ready? Mason looked at Dragok, then at the crowd of watching aliens. This wasn't just about him anymore. In their eyes, he represented all of humanity, the strange creatures from a Deathworld that even elite alien predators found challenging. "I'm ready," he said. The first test was simple, lifting weights. The gravity in the room was set halfway between Earth's and the Reknar homeworld. Mason struggled with the heavier weights that Dragok lifted easily. The alien crowd murmured, clearly thinking the human was weak. "Don't worry," Dr. Bell whispered to Mason after the first test. "This is just one type of strength." The second test involved running through an obstacle course. Here, Mason did better. His smaller size and greater flexibility let him move through tight spaces faster than the bulky Reknar. They finished this test with equal scores. The third test was aimed at testing pain tolerance. Both Mason and Dragok had to hold their hands in ice water. The cold that had nearly killed Dragok on the mountain wasn't as severe here, but Mason still lasted longer. "Interesting," Kreltak said, recording the results. "Humans have higher cold tolerance despite evolving on a planet with warm regions." "We live everywhere on Earth," Dr. Bell explained. "Deserts, tropics, Arctic regions, we adapt." The fourth test was combat training with practice weapons. Dragok was clearly the better fighter, his moves precise and powerful. Mason held his own but lost the match. By midday, they had completed 5 tests with Dragok slightly ahead in points. The aliens watching seemed impressed that Mason had done as well as he had against the elite warrior. They were preparing for the 6th test when a loud alarm sounded throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors. "What's happening?" Mason asked Kreltax. The Zarkath scientist looked at a device on his wrist, his 6 eyes blinking rapidly, and what Mason had learned was a sign of distress. "Engineering section reports a failure in the environmental systems," Kreltax said. "Very serious. Very dangerous." The room began to fill with confusion as aliens rushed toward exits. Some were already coughing or showing signs of discomfort. "What kind of failure?" Dr. Bell asked, staying calm. "Radiation shielding damaged, and..." Kreltax paused, looking even more worried. "Toxic gas leaking into air circulation." Dragok joined them, looking concerned. "The emergency systems are not responding correctly. The ship's safety protocols are failing." Mason saw that many of the aliens were starting to collapse or show signs of sickness. The Zarkath crew seemed paralyzed with fear. "We need to fix this," Mason said. "Where are the environmental controls?" Kreltax pointed to a map on the wall. "Main controls are here, but the radiation will be strongest in that area. No one can survive exposure for long." "What about the gas leaks?" Dr. Bell asked. "Filtration systems are here," Dragok said, pointing to another location. "But the toxic gas would kill most species within minutes without protection." Mason and Dr. Bell looked at each other. They both knew what needed to be done. "I'll handle the radiation shielding," Mason said. "Dr. Bell, can you work on the filtration system?" "Yes," she replied. "The Earth's natural radiation and our polluted cities have made us more resistant than most species." Dragok stared at them. "You would risk yourselves?" "Everyone on this ship will die if we don't," Mason said simply. Mason ran through corridors now empty of aliens. Following Kreltax's directions, he found the engineering section. Warning signs in alien languages flashed on all screens. The radiation levels here would be deadly to the Zarkath and Reknar, but humans could tolerate short exposure. Working quickly, Mason found the damaged shielding panel. He could feel the radiation burning his skin, but he kept working. The repair was simple enough. A power connection had come loose and needed to be reattached. Meanwhile, Dr. Bell had reached the filtration systems. The air here was filled with a greenish gas that burned her eyes and lungs. She held her breath as much as possible while working to reroute the ventilation system. In the medical bay, Kreltax and Dragok watched in amazement as the humans worked, in conditions that would kill their own species in minutes. Their Deathworld prepared them for this, Kreltax said. Radiation, toxic elements, atmospheric variations, all things they face on Earth. They are not just surviving, Dragok added. They are saving others at risk to themselves, a quality of true warriors. Within 20 minutes, Mason had restored the radiation shielding. Dr. Bell had created a bypass for the ventilation system that kept the toxic gas contained. The ship's alarms stopped, and the emergency was over. When they returned to the main area, exhausted and showing signs of radiation burns and gas exposure, the aliens looked at them differently than before, not with curiosity or amusement, but with respect and even awe. "You have done the impossible," Ambassador Vexlor said. "You survived conditions that would kill most species and saved this ship." "Not impossible," Mason said, breathing heavily. "Just another day on a Deathworld." 2 days after the emergency on the ship, Mason and Dr. Bell were back on Earth. The medical team had treated their radiation burns and cleared them to return to duty. Word of their actions had spread through the alien diplomatic corps. Humans were no longer seen as just curious creatures from a Deathworld. They were now respected. Mason was in a meeting with General Harris when an urgent message arrived from the Zarkath embassy. "They want us there right away," General Harris said, looking at his phone. "Something about a distress signal." When they arrived, Ambassador Vexlor was waiting with Dragok and several other aliens Mason hadn't seen before. They all looked worried. "Thank you for coming quickly," Vexlor said. "We have received a distress signal from one of our colony worlds, Zarkath Prime 7. "What happened?" Mason asked. Vexlor touched a screen, showing a distant planet. "The colony has been attacked by the Krevnar, a hostile species from the outer systems. They are known for taking territories by force." "How can we help?" General Harris asked. "We are not asking for help," one of the new aliens said harshly. "The colony is likely already lost. We are simply informing you of the situation." Dragok stepped forward. "That is not entirely true. The Zarkath Council is debating whether to send aid. Some believe it is too dangerous." "Too dangerous?" Dr. Bell asked. "Because of the Krevnar?" "Yes and no," Kreltax explained, joining the conversation. "The Krevnar have deployed environmental weapons. They have released chemicals into the atmosphere that target Zarkath biology. Anyone we send would likely die before they could help." Mason looked at Dr. Bell. They were both thinking the same thing. "What about humans?" Mason asked. "Would these chemicals affect us?" The aliens looked surprised at the question. "We do not know," Vexlor admitted. "Your biology is different from ours, but you evolved on a Deathworld," Kreltax added. "Your bodies can withstand toxins and conditions that would kill us." "We could send a team," General Harris suggested. "A small group to assess the situation." "It would be extremely dangerous," Vexlor warned. "So is Earth, according to your classification," Mason pointed out. After much discussion, a plan was made. A joint team of humans and Vreknar would travel to the colony. The humans would take the lead where environmental hazards were concerned, while the Vreknar would handle any direct combat. Captain Laura Hayes was chosen to lead the human team. She was a tall, strong woman with short brown hair and years of experience in dangerous situations. Mason and Dr. Bell were assigned to her team, along with 4 other specialists. As they prepared to leave, Dragok approached Mason. "I did not expect humans to volunteer for such a mission," he said. "It's what we do," Mason replied. "Help others when we can." Dragok nodded. "On my world, we have a saying. True strength is shown not in conquest, but in protection. I am beginning to see that humans understand this well." The journey to Zarkath Prime 7 took 3 days in the Vreknar's fastest ship. As they approached the planet, they could see the damage. Cities were burning. The atmosphere had a strange yellow tint. Sensors show high levels of toxins in the air, Dr. Bell reported, looking at the equipment. "It attacks the Zarkath respiratory system." "And humans?" Captain Hayes asked. "It appears similar to some pollutants we deal with on Earth. Unpleasant but not immediately lethal to us." They landed on the outskirts of the main colony. The scene was grim. Many Zarkath colonists had fallen where they stood, overcome by the toxins. Others had taken shelter in sealed buildings, but their supplies were running low. The Krevnar had set up bases around the colony's main resources. They were tall, insect-like creatures with hard exoskeletons and multiple limbs. Their technology was advanced, especially their environmental weapons. Captain Hayes surveyed the situation through binoculars. Their weapons are targeting specific biology. They never expected to face a different species here. That gives us an advantage, Mason said. Yes, Dragok agreed. The question is how to use it. Captain Hayes looked at her team, then at the Reknar warriors who had come with them. Two different species from very different worlds now working together against a common enemy. We have something the Krevnar don't know about, she said. The adaptability of a Deathworld species combined with the fighting skills of the galaxy's elite warriors. She pointed to the largest Krevnar base, and we're going to show them exactly what that means. The attack on the Krevnar base began at dawn. Captain Hayes led the human team through the yellow fog that filled the valley. They wore only light-breathing masks, while the Vreknar needed full protective suits. The main environmental weapon is in the center of their base, Dr. Bell said, checking her scanner. It's releasing the toxins that target the Zarkath biology. Our job is to shut it down, Captain Hayes reminded them. The Reknar will handle the Krevnar soldiers. The plan was simple but dangerous. The humans would use their resistance to the toxins to reach the weapon, while the Vreknar created a distraction. They moved quietly through the fog. The Krevnar had not expected anyone to be able to move through their toxic cloud. Most of their sensors were focused outward, not inside their own weapons range. When they reached the edge of the base, Dragok and his warriors launched their attack from the opposite side. Alarms blared. Insect-like Krevnar soldiers rushed to defend their position. Now's our chance, Captain Hayes whispered. The human team slipped into the base while the Krevnar were distracted. Mason led the way, using the skills he had learned as a military liaison. They moved from building to building, avoiding patrols. They found the environmental weapon in a large dome at the center of the base. It was a massive machine pumping yellow gas into the air. We need to shut it down, Dr. Bell said, examining the controls. But it's all in their language. Can we just break it? One of the team members suggested. Too risky, Dr. Bell replied. It might release all the toxins at once. While they debated, the battle outside grew louder. The Reknar were fighting fiercely, but they were outnumbered. We're running out of time, Captain Hayes said. That's when Mason noticed something. Look at the Krevnar operating the machine. They're wearing special masks. The gas must be dangerous to them too in high concentrations, Dr. Bell realized. Then we have our answer, Mason said. He pointed to the air system that kept the room clear for the Krevnar operators. We reverse the airflow. Send the gas back into this room instead of outside. Dr. Bell quickly found the air system controls. With a few adjustments, she reversed the flow. Yellow gas began to fill the room. The Krevnar operators panicked, trying to increase their mask protection. Let's go, Captain Hayes ordered. The human team retreated as the Krevnar scrambled to fix their weapon. In the confusion, no one noticed the humans slipping away. Outside, they rejoined the Reknar warriors. Dragok's forces had fought bravely, but were beginning to fall back under the superior numbers of the Krevnar. The weapon, Dragok asked, breathing heavily in his protective suit. Turned against them, Mason replied. Within minutes, alarms sounded throughout the Krevnar base. Their soldiers began to retreat as the yellow gas filled their own structures. Without their environmental weapon, they lost their main advantage. The combined human Reknar force pressed forward. The Krevnar, facing enemies who could withstand their weapon and now dealing with their own toxic gas, abandoned their positions. By nightfall, the Krevnar had retreated completely from the planet. The Zarkath colonists emerged from their shelters, grateful for the rescue. 1 month later, Mason stood in a grand hall in the Zarkath embassy on Earth. Representatives from dozens of alien species had gathered for a special ceremony. Ambassador Vexilor stood on a platform, addressing the crowd. Today we formally recognize Earth and humanity with a new classification. He activated a screen showing Earth, but the red warning symbols that used to surround it were gone. Earth remains a Class 5 death world, Vexler continued. But its people will no longer be viewed with fear or curiosity. They will be respected as the crucible species, forged in harsh conditions to become the most adaptable beings we have encountered. Captain Hayes and her team were given special honors. Dr. Bell was appointed to head a new scientific exchange program, and Mason found himself with a new title, Interspecies Defense Liaison. After the ceremony, Dragok approached Mason. My hunters have requested permission to train with humans, he said. They wish to learn your adaptability. And what about you? Mason asked. I have learned that true strength comes in many forms, Dragok replied. Your death world created a species that can survive what others cannot. But more importantly, you use that strength to protect others. As Mason looked around the room at the gathering of species from across the galaxy, he felt pride. Humans had gone from being curiosities from a deadly planet to respected allies. Their harsh home world, once seen as a disadvantage, had proven to be their greatest strength. Earth, the death world that even elite alien predators avoided, had produced the very qualities the galaxy needed most.